Hello and welcome to the Living Your Best Life webinar series presented by the Huntsman World Senior Games. This is a monthly webinar that covers a wide variety of topics that are designed to help you live your best life. My name is Kyle Case, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Chief Executive Officer of the Huntsman World Senior Games. Our expert presenter, Kelly Welker, is a registered nurse, a certified case manager, and an integrative nutrition health coach. As a nurse case manager for many years, she had daily interaction with people who suffered from chronic and debilitating illnesses like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, kidney disease, cancer, arthritis, obesity, and many others. Due to their serious conditions, they were spending most of their day in a recliner and taking 15 to 20 different medications, relying on others to help them with their basic activities of daily living. And Kelly decided that she wanted to do something to help. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're so excited to learn from you. And as the topic says, learn how to fuel our bodies. I know so many of us have set New Year's resolutions to maybe exercise a little bit more, eat a little bit more healthy, maybe drop a pound or two. And I think the timeliness of this message is going to be right on. I do want to ask you this, though, Kelly. You've been working in this field for a while, and obviously you've seen the downsides of not doing what you're about to share with us. I'm sure that you've also seen the upsides of doing some of those things. Right. I feel like for most of us, Kelly, we have kind of a basic understanding of we need to exercise, we need to eat right. We know some of those basic things. What have you found in interacting with clients and customers, and even in your own life? What have you found that really works, that allows people to stick with it?
Well, that's a great question. And the thing that is key is I help people figure out the reason why they want to make those changes.
Okay.
But on a deep level, because if our reason why is because we want to fit into a certain pair of jeans, when the temptations really come or something gets a little out of our comfort zone, it's easy to just say, who cares? I'll buy bigger jeans.
I'll just buy an inch bigger. It's only 1 inch, right?
Right. So we have to really drill down and figure out what is that deep why that's going to keep us motivated through the times when it gets just a little bit challenging.
I appreciate that. And I think you've nailed it right on. It's got to be about that why, and it's got to be a significant why. So anyway, we're excited to hear from you. I know you've got a lot of information to share and to present. So I'm going to turn the time over to you, Kelly. And then at the end, I'll pop back on and we can answer some of the questions that come from those who are joining us today. Okay?
Okay, great. All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully everybody can see that just fine. Before I get into the topic, I want to give you just a little bit more history about myself and what brought me to becoming a health coach. And as Kyle mentioned, I worked as a nurse for 35 years. And for the last 20 years of that time, I worked in home health and case management. So in those nursing roles, I interacted with the people who had the chronic illnesses. And like was mentioned, they were homebound. They only left home to go to their medical appointments. They were on multiple medications. They required help from other people, whether family or friends or paid help, just to be able to bathe and get dressed and have meals prepared. And they spent their days in a recliner, just getting through the day and then waking up and doing it all over again. And it just became discouraging and heartbreaking to know that as a nurse, I really couldn't turn that around for them. I couldn't help them in a way that was going to get them out of that recliner by that point. And I started to think about myself and my family and wondering how can I prevent that from happening to us? And so I started to do some research because I saw myself heading in that direction that I saw in my patients. And I was overweight, probably 40 pounds overweight. And I had tried every diet under the sun, and it would work for a little while. And then I would gain the weight back, plus a little bit more. I had seasonal allergies for many, many months of the year. I would take a Zyrtec every day. I had eczema that would flare up. I had cystic acne that would come occasionally and was very painful and embarrassing. And I had back pain that sometimes limited my ability to do the things that I wanted to do. And so I started researching and studying nutrition and lifestyle habits that could help me turn those things around and could prevent me from ending up where my patients were. And so I began to learn a lot, and I learned that, yes, our choices have a big impact on our health outcomes. When I went through nursing school, I was taught that these chronic illnesses were just the luck of the draw, or they were hereditary and there was nothing anybody could do, and they just had to manage the symptoms once they came. And so that was kind of my mindset, but I started to learn that that was not true, and that these things can be prevented, and that they can be prevented with pretty small steps that we implement over a long period of time. So I started to implement those steps, and I was able to lose the weight. I was able to overcome the allergies, the eczema. I haven't had a Zyrtec for years, thank goodness. And no more eczema. I don't have any back pain. I recently, about a year ago, we moved to St. George, and it's amazing here. You have so many months of the year when you can be outside doing things. And so every day I am either playing pickleball or hiking in the red rocks close to my home, or riding my e-bike. And it's great and wonderful. And I love the life that I have now. And I don't think I would be experiencing this same amount of energy and being able to do what I want if I hadn't made those changes. I believe that I changed the path that I was on, and I'm so grateful for that. But it really got me thinking about how I can help other people. And because I wanted to impact people before they got to that stage that my patients were in, and help them change that trajectory and avoid that kind of life. And so I knew that I wanted to become a health and wellness coach. So I looked into some different schools, and I found the Institute for Integrated Nutrition and enrolled in that, completed that, and received my certification. And I learned so much more than I ever knew as a nurse about how to be healthy, and so much more than I knew from just studying on my own. So I'm really happy that I had that opportunity, and that now I get to have the best job in the world. I work with people one-on-one. I walk them through the process of how to go from borderline bad health to thriving, vibrant health. And it's the most fun I've ever had, except playing with my grandkids. But it's amazing and I love it. And I get to do things like this and hopefully spread the word even to a broader audience that there are small and simple things we can do that make a big difference. So the title of our webinar today is Start the Year Off Right and Fuel Your Body with What It Needs. So I want you to think for just a minute, because Kyle mentioned that, yep, it's the time for New Year's resolutions. And I know for so many years, that was my top resolution. Lose weight, get in shape, get rid of this back pain. Always, that was my goal for the year. But I didn't understand how to do it completely. And so I would try and then I would fail. But I have to say, when I say fail, it was because I had the wrong information. It wasn't because I didn't have the ability. And it's the same for you. We all have the ability. We just have to have the right information. So if you think about any health goals that you have for this year, what are they? Do you want to get rid of joint pain and muscle pain? Do you want to sleep better? Do you want to have better digestion? Do you want to have better mood, more steady moods? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to decrease inflammation? Have you recently had a health marker that wasn't good, like an elevated A1C or blood sugar, and you want to get that under control? Whatever it is, if that's a goal of yours, you're in the right place today. And this can be the year that you finally are able to make those changes that you've been wanting to make. So I'm going to start off the presentation with talking about the blue zones. Probably many of you have heard of the blue zones. They're called longevity hotspots, and they're areas in the world where people commonly live to be 100 or more. They can live to be 110, 115. And you might think, oh, who wants to do that? I don't want to live that old. I watched my grandfather live that old and it was horrible. But the fascinating part about the blue zones is that they live to be that old in a state of complete health. Their rates of chronic illness are the lowest on the earth. Their rates of mental illness are very low. They are happier. They are completely engaged and active with their family and their friends and community. And can you imagine if you could live to be 100 or more in a healthy state, the things you could do and experience in this life? You would have so much time. And I just think it's amazing. And so this started out as a National Geographic expedition, and they sent teams, and a gentleman named Dan Buettner. They sent him with a team, and they went and they lived in these blue zones for a period of time. And they observed the people and what they did, and they asked questions, and they just learned everything they could about each of these areas. And then they came home and they compiled all of this information and they narrowed it down to some commonalities. And these are the commonalities that they found in each of the blue zones. Now, let me show you those again. Notice that one of them is in Loma Linda, California. So that's kind of funny because it's not really isolated like Okinawa, Japan. It's an island. But Loma Linda, California is where the Seventh-day Adventist headquarters are, and many of the people in this blue zone belong to that group. But anyway, they came back from these expeditions and they compiled all their information, and this is what they came up with that was common among all of the areas. So movement, we talk about, oh, I'm going to work out today, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to lift weights. They didn't do that. Not that that's bad and that we shouldn't do that, but what they found with the people in the blue zones was that they just moved naturally throughout their day. They walked to do their errands. They took care of their homes. They took care of their yards. They gardened. They played with their grandchildren. They played with their friends outside, even the older people. They just moved throughout their day. And when heavy things needed to be lifted, they lifted heavy things. And they were able to do that. And that was common among all of the areas. And then they had a purpose. They had a reason to get up every day. For some people, it was their jobs that got them up. They had to be at their job. They felt a sense of responsibility there. For some people, it was they're looking forward to seeing their friends and spending time with them. For others, it was they had a role to play in their family or community. Maybe it was to watch the younger children. Maybe it was to take care of an older relative that needed help because of an illness. Maybe it was their hobbies that got them up, but they all had a purpose and a reason to get up in the morning. And stress management. So our body is always working to try to keep us healthy, always. And it's trying to protect us. So when it feels that we have a stress, say we're running from a tiger or we're about to get hit by a car, we get a boost of adrenaline. That's a stress hormone that our body sends out to make us be able to run faster and be stronger to get away from that threat. So we have adrenaline and we have cortisol, and those are both released when our body perceives a threat. And so in our modern world, we sometimes perceive threats that aren't real and don't need those hormones. Like we're overwhelmed with busyness, or we have a family problem, a relationship problem, those kind of things, or financial worries, those kind of things, our body perceives as a threat and releases these hormones. And when we have them coursing throughout our body when we don't need them, they do a lot of damage and they lead to illness and mental health issues and things like that. The people in the blue zones had daily rituals that helped them manage their stress. For some of them, it was prayer. For some, it was spending time with their grandchildren. For some, it was playing a game with their friends. For some, it was taking a nap. But they all had daily rituals that were just natural, again, part of their day that helped them manage their stress. And then they had a belonging, and in this sense, it meant a belonging with a faith group. So they had a faith in a higher power, and they had like-minded people around them. That's what that portion meant. They put their family first. They placed a high value on their family relationships. And often in many of the zones, they would have multi-generations living in one home and helping to support and care for each other. They had a strong social network, strong set of friends, community that was there to support each other. And one of the stories that I love so much comes out of Okinawa, Japan. And they have what is called a moai. And that is when the children are 4 or 5 years old, they are assigned a group of friends, and it's called their moai. And it's about 10 children that are put together in this group. And that group's assignment throughout their lives, from age 4 until death, their assignment is to support each other. And that means emotionally, financially. If someone had a financial setback, the group would rally and help them through that. If a person had an illness, they would help them through that, or a divorce. All of these kinds of things, they had a built-in support system for. And in fact, still to this day, the centenarians, the 100-year-olds or the 110-year-olds, they still get together every month with their moai and have lunch or play cards or something. And I just think that's the sweetest thing. I don't know how we could manage that here, because people are moving all over the place throughout their lives, but it's a really sweet concept. But that is something they all had in common, was they had a strong social network. And then the last thing was their diets. And you saw how they were located in various areas around the world, so they were not all eating the same diet. But the commonality was that they had a plant-based diet. They had some animal products, most of them. I believe the Seventh-day Adventists are vegan or vegetarian, but the majority of them did eat animal products, but they ate them in smaller amounts. So any of these topics could be a whole webinar on its own, but today we're just going to talk about the plant-based diet and what it is, what does that mean exactly, and why it's important for our bodies. You are going to be amazed at what it can do for our body. I was amazed, and I recently read a book that really even opened up my mind even more about the benefits of this. So I will explain that part to you, and then how can we do it? So what is it? Why is it important? And how can we do it in our type of life that we lead? So I know that you recognize what a plant-based diet probably means, but I just want to go through it in a little bit of detail so that if there's a question, if you had a question about something, we can clear that up. So obviously, fruits and vegetables are included in a plant-based diet. All types of fruits and vegetables. And then legumes, which are all types of beans, peas, lentils, and even peanuts are legumes. Legumes are all plants. And then whole grains. So wheat, barley, rye, oats, rice, things like quinoa and millet. And then nuts and seeds, all types of nuts, walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds, macadamia nuts. Nuts and seeds are like pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, hemp hearts, those kind of things. And then healthy fat. So I want to just touch on that briefly, because for so many years we were told, don't eat any fat. Fat's bad for you. Buy everything low fat milk, low fat cheese, low fat cookies, everything. And it turns out that's not true. Our body needs fat, and plenty of it. Our cells all require fat to function, especially our brain cells and our nerve cells. And if they don't have that fat around them, they can't function the way they should. And we start to lose our mental ability and our functional abilities. So fat in our diet is very important, but we want to get the right kind. And there's a misconception out there that, hey, vegetable oil is made of vegetables, so it must be the right kind of fat. But that's not true. There are many fats, and I'm talking like cooking oil kind of fats out there that are very detrimental to our health. And they are the fats that come from seeds. So, for example, canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, safflower and sunflower oil. All of those oils, to get to the state where we can use them as an oil, have been so highly processed and refined with coloring added and artificial ingredients added to get them to a point where we can use them, that they have become very inflammatory. And if you buy a packaged food and you look on the back at the ingredients, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see one of these oils on there. And these are very dangerous. So it's good to completely stay away from those kinds of oils. The healthy fats come from things like avocado. So avocado oil and avocado itself, olive oil and olives, even peanut oil is good. Coconut oil is healthy, which is the opposite of what we used to be told. And butter or ghee is just butter with the milk portion taken out. So that takes out the dairy portion. So ghee is a good cooking oil too. So those things are all to be included in a plant-based diet. And then animal products can also be included, but just in smaller amounts. In the blue zones, some of them used meat. When I say animal products, I mean like beef, pork, poultry, fish, and then dairy, milk and cheeses, that kind of thing. So in some of the blue zones, they used animal products only for celebrations. So like for birthdays or holidays, they would roast a pig or cook fish or something like that. Some of them had it about once a week, and others had it daily, but in small amounts. So if you looked at their plate when they were eating, the animal product portion would take up less than a quarter of the plate, and then the rest of the plate would be filled with plants. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about smaller amounts of animal products. So this is the fascinating and exciting part about why it is important. Of course, the Blue Zone people, they've been doing this for hundreds of years, and they don't know the relationship between the way they eat and their gut health. Gut health is only something that's really come to the front of medical knowledge in the last 10 to 15 years. But in the last 5 years, there has been so much research on it, and it is so important. And one part of gut health that I want to talk about right now is that we have, well, you might be thinking, well, what does that mean, gut health? Well, there's a couple parts to it. One part is we have bacteria, we have microbes made up of bacteria, viruses, fungus, yeast. All of these things live inside of us. So I'm just going to use the term bacteria for now, but that covers all of it. So those things live within our intestines, especially within our colon and our lower intestine. In fact, I learned that we have more bacteria that live inside of us than we have cells in our body. So you can actually say you're made up more of bacteria than you are of cells. So anyway, these bacteria live in there, and we have good ones that are good for our health, and we have bad ones that are bad for our health. Unfortunately, our modern lifestyle and diet tends to feed the bad bacteria. When we get things like small intestine bacterial overgrowth, that's the bad kind of bacteria. We get yeast infections and fungal infections. So sugar, artificial sweetener, those kind of things kind of feed the bad. So, but we want to talk about the good and what they can do. And what they've found through these studies is that the good bacteria that live inside of our intestines create short chain fatty acids. And these short chain fatty acids are kind of like communicators within our body. They communicate with our immune system. They communicate with our brain. They communicate with our skin. And they're like little magic people, magic compounds down there that do all these things for us that lead to good, thriving health. So they have found that having a diversity of plant fiber is what helps us have the best gut bacteria that we can have. So each of the bacteria, they like to eat a certain kind of plant fiber. And the more variety of good bacteria we can have, the more short chain fatty acids we can have, and the better everything functions. So in order to have a variety of good bacteria, we have to eat a variety of plants. So that's why elimination diets, although they can be useful in the short term to figure out a problem, they're not good in the long term because they limit the amount of good bacteria that we can feed. So we want to make sure that we're having a diversity. And then those good bacteria are going to be fed and happy, and they're going to thrive. And that's what we want. So if diversity of plants is good for our health, that's great news because there are a lot of plants out there. But I am always amazed when I study this topic about the benefits of having those good bacteria down there. And you can read through this list yourself. I won't go through everything. But I do want to touch on repairing the leaky gut. So I mentioned that there's a couple of parts to having a healthy gut. One is having the good bacteria thriving. The other one is having an intact lining throughout the whole intestinal system. And again, modern things like highly processed foods with chemicals added, those colorings that are added, artificial colors, the sugar, the artificial sweeteners in the sodas, stress, all of these things contribute to creating holes in that lining. And it's estimated that about 80% of people have some form of leaky gut. That's what they call it. You can call it leaky gut. And it just means that that lining has some holes in it. So 85 to 90% of our immune system lives just on the other side of that lining. And so when there are holes in there, then as we eat food and process the food, things that should not cross that barrier cross over. And that puts our immune system in a state of high alert. It's like, alert, alert. Oh no, this is over here. We've got to take care of this. So it puts in motion the processes for inflammation, because on the short term, inflammation is how our body takes care of something that shouldn't be there. And so this process happens when it shouldn't be happening, and it leads to allergies, food sensitivities, food allergies, seasonal allergies, eczema, and it can lead to autoimmune diseases. And an autoimmune disease comes about when our immune system fights our own body, and it can happen to any part of our body. It can happen to our thyroid, it can happen to our joints, it can happen to our digestive organs. And so autoimmune diseases are actually related to a leaky gut. So by feeding these good bacteria and taking some other steps like giving ourselves a good digestive rest every day and not eating every couple of hours, that can help our gut lining heal. That's the good news. It can heal. Once we have those holes, we're not set there forever. It can heal. So these are some of the benefits that come from having a diversity of plants in our diet. And I think it's just amazing. Okay, so now if you are convinced of the benefit of a plant-based diet, you might think, yeah, but how can I do that? You know, I'm used to basing my meal around a piece of meat and then a potato. And if I think about it, I might have some broccoli. And that's kind of, when I look back at how I fed my children when they were growing up, and even my husband and I later, after we became empty nesters, I didn't really focus on vegetables. I'd open a can of green beans and add it just because I thought, well, I think we're supposed to have something green. So I know that it's not been a focus for a lot of us for many years, because we were focused on controlling calories, eating low fat. We thought that was the healthy way to go. And so we'd buy packaged foods that had a set amount of calories. Can't tell you how many 100 calorie snack packs I ate when I was in my 30s and 40s. But anyway, we've been trying to incorporate this more and more, because as I've learned more, I've just become convinced that this is the key to living a long, healthy life. I don't want to just live a long life. I want to be able to do the things I want to do, spend time with my family, help my friends. I don't want to be someone's burden. So I would like to have a long life, but if I can be healthy. And I've become convinced that this is the way to do it. And so we've been trying to incorporate more and more of these things in the way we eat and structure our diet. So I wanted to talk about fermented foods for a minute, because we talk about having this healthy bunch of bacteria that live down there, but how do we get them there? Like, where do they come from? Well, some of them are there when you're born. Some of them come from your environment and how dirty or clean, I shouldn't say how dirty or clean, but sometimes we've become super clean and we've got to use hand sanitizer wherever we go. And they say that this hyper clean generation that we're in has less good bacteria within their bodies because they're not getting it naturally, maybe from their hands or being outside, playing outside where it's dirty. So some of it comes from that, and some of it comes from what we eat. So, and you've heard of probiotics. So we can take a probiotic in a pill. They're not always as effective, but sometimes they are. And we can also get it from the food we eat. So those are things that have live bacteria in them. Things like sauerkraut, kimchi, miso soup, those kind of things. Those are fermented foods. And you can ferment any vegetable yourself at home. And I started an experiment, and I did some green beans and I did some carrots. And I loved the green beans. I didn't love the carrots, but it's a great way to get fermented foods in your body. And that way you get the probiotics, meaning the good bacteria inside of you. And then you have to feed them. And that's where the plant food comes in. So I would encourage you to cook at home more often. Try something new every week when you go shopping for your produce for the week. Try something new and see if you can broaden the amount of plant fibers that you're eating, or try a new grain that you haven't tried before. And you've probably heard the term eat the rainbow. That just means when you're planning out your meal or you're looking at your plate, make it as colorful as possible and add in things of different colors. So not everything has to be green. Let's get some red vegetables in there and some colorful berries and peppers and things like that. So just try to have a colorful plate when you're eating a meal. And then just be diligent. Make sure you're having plants at every meal. And something that I've read about and that I've done a little bit is to count plant points. That just means when you eat a meal, see how many different plants were in that meal and try to get 10 every day. So for example, if you had oatmeal in the morning and you put flaxseed on top and walnuts and blueberries, that's the oatmeal, the flaxseed, the blueberries. You could even throw on chia seeds and then the walnuts. That's 5 plants just in that one meal. So it's kind of a fun way to make sure that you're getting a wide variety of plants. You can't count something twice. So then if you had blueberries later in the day, for your daily total of 10, you wouldn't count the blueberries again. So that's just kind of a fun way to do it. But I want to encourage you to start now. Just think about your current situation. What are you eating? How many plants are you getting? And then just make a plan to make small improvements over time. And it's really helpful if you have an accountability partner. It can be a spouse, a friend, just someone who wants the same thing. You can hire a professional if you need to, but having an accountability partner makes a big difference in how successful we are over time with new habits. And then just remember that you can make small changes, and if you're consistent with them over time, it adds up to huge results. So, and you can do it, because if I can do it, anybody can do it, and it's not hard. So thank you. That's the end of my prepared presentation. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody here. I just love talking about this stuff and just getting the word out and helping people be more healthy. So if you would like any more personalized help, then you can contact me at any of these places here below. So thank you.
Wow. Kelly, what a great not only topic, but just, relevant information. You definitely covered a lot of things that sparked a question or an interest in me for sure. And as you said, you started talking about blue zones. I'm marginally familiar with blue zones. I'm aware of the concept, and a lot of the things that you shared are things that I had heard before. I do need to get this book and read it. I have not yet done that. But if you're going to learn, you might as well learn from the people who are doing it right. Even if they
Right,
didn't know
exactly.
they were doing it right, they're still doing it
Yeah, they were
right.
just living their life, but
So,
yeah.
so just a couple of really quick things, and we've got several questions that have come in. We talk a lot about exercise and diet, and we know how important those things are. I'm glad that you touched briefly on the community and the social aspect. That's another area that I have just seen a lot of research come out recently that is so crucial and so important. And I wasn't familiar with this MOI term, but what a great concept and what a great idea. And
Yeah.
you said that in Okinawa, they start them at 4 years old and then they get a chance to follow throughout their entire lives together. But I wonder if we can just build our own moai around people
Yeah,
that we love and
right.
that we trust and that we want
Let's
to be
just,
with.
yeah, let's just create our own moai.
But I love that concept because we do know, again, through research and just life experience, that being socially connected is so very, very important. And so I'm glad you touched on that as well. You mentioned a couple of different times throughout your presentation that we used to think one thing, but now we know another thing. And I'll be honest, this is one of my biggest challenges when it comes to health and wellness, is knowing my information that I'm following is up to date and it's
Right,
accurate. And that
right.
doesn't mean that I don't believe that we learn new stuff and we can, replace old ideas with new ideas. I do believe that. But any tips that you would have to know that what we're getting is actually the right, at least most up to date stuff?
Yeah, well, I don't want to be cynical, but there is that saying, follow the money. And part of the problem with what we learned in the past about the low fat, we found out that those studies were funded by the sugar industry.
Mm.
And they wanted to hide the fact that sugar was causing a lot of our problems. And so they wanted to
So they
focus
blame the
on
fat.
that. And so we just have to be careful. And when we see something, we can look for a study to back that up, but then just see who's funding the study. And,
That makes sense.
the more when you can get your information from people who aren't selling you a product, it can be often more believable and more true.
Yeah,
So just watch for that.
generally tends to be more accurate. I can
Mhm.
see how that would be the case. So excellent. One other point that I just would make, just to emphasize that you made, and that is that concept of consistency. There are so many things that can be adjusted just minimally that make such a big impact if we're consistent, even with that minimal change. And,
Yes.
and that's the hardest part, I think, for many of us, myself included. I wake up on January 1st, and oftentimes I just want to change everything about me.
Yeah.
I want to grow
Right.
some hair up here. I want to eat better. I want to bench press 400 pounds. I want to change everything about me. And then I miss the opportunity to be consistent with small incremental changes. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned that. I think that's important. I want to get to a few questions that we have. We do have a few that came in. This first one, I think, is kind of what I was thinking as well. The question is, this makes me feel a little overwhelmed. So if I had to make one change right now, what would you suggest?
I would just suggest thinking about how many plants you're eating every day and just slowly trying to introduce more. Yeah, I worried about that, like, oh, is this too much information? But it all boils down, you saw the benefits that come from those plants. So it all boils down to just slowly making changes, adding in more plants. And when you do that, you're going to be automatically crowding out things that are less healthy for you.
I like your idea of slowly introducing new plants as well. As you were going through this presentation, I was thinking to myself, I do try to eat fruits and vegetables. I'm not as good as I need to be, or as I want to be, or as I should be, but I do try to eat. But I find myself in a rut, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at apples. I'm reasonably good at oranges. I'm pretty good at carrots, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Once in a
Let
while,
me
I'll
tell
open up
you,
a
let
can
me
of
tell you
green
a
beans.
tip that I didn't mention on my slide,
Yeah, please.
and that is a smoothie.
Mm,
Because I'll make us smoothies here 3 or 4 times a week. And I just start with a base of some kind of milk. I like my homemade almond milk,
mhm.
but you can use any kind of milk. Then different fruits. Costco has a great bag of frozen organic fruits, and you can just throw a handful of those in. So you're getting a multiplicity of fruits in that. Then you can add in chia seeds or flax seeds. Then you can add in a bunch of spinach and berries. And you can get so many plants in one smoothie that can cover you for that day. It's just a really great way to get in a lot of plants.
Great tip. Great tip. I appreciate that. Another question from one of our listeners, Leslie. She says, I've read that eating a plant-based diet can prevent or even reverse the growth of cancer cells. What do you know about that?
Yes, there are definitely some studies that show that. They've done animal studies that have been very positive in that regard. And I believe that there have been a couple of human studies also.
So that's positive news, right? That's good news.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
I don't know about the reversing. I'll have to be honest there. I know about the preventing.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd have to do some research to see about the reversing.
But worth looking into just a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Another question about fermented food and fermented products. This specifically is about kefir. Kefir is a fermented milk product, and it has valuable probiotics, as we understand today. It is animal based. Is that a good choice in a plant-based diet, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, kefir is a great choice because it's not a big percentage of what you're taking in that day. The only caution with kefir and yogurt is that they often come with a lot of sugar added. So you want to watch that, because if you have
that's just to make it taste good though, Kelly.
and then you're taking in the sugar is going to feed the bad. So those probiotics might just slip on through because you're
kind of offset,
causing the bad to thrive. So just be careful with that and get plain yogurt. I used to not like plain yogurt, but I love it now with any kind of fruit added. And sometimes I'll stir in like almond butter, and it's delicious.
Well, there's a good idea. I actually do like almond butter. I've not been a huge fan of plain yogurt, but you've got, again,
try some almond butter and some blueberries in there.
You got me thinking. That's great. There is one other question here. This isn't designed to be, a cooking show or a food preparation show, but I do have this question myself. I don't understand it very well. You're talking about the fermented food again. What is the process that you use to ferment food? You're doing this at your own home now, right?
I've done some experiments here. So I'm not a pro at it by any means, but I did look up some recipes, and it's a matter of taking the food, the vegetable, and putting it in like a mason jar and covering it with a saltwater brine.
Okay.
And then whatever spices and things like that you want to add. And you can look up these recipes just as easily as I can.
Sure.
And then you let it sit on your counter for a few days. And the vegetables have to be below the water. If they're above, then they can get mold or something on them.
Okay.
So they have to stay below the water, but then bacteria is able to grow in there. And it sounds gross, but these are good bacteria. And so the water will begin to get a little bit cloudy. And once that happens after 3 or 4 days, then it can go in the fridge and it just continues to ferment over time. And when we eat it, then we get the good bacteria.
So again, I just know so very little about this, but is the longer that you ferment it, is that better for you? Or once it reaches that level of fermentation, it's all good from there?
Yeah, I think the longer it goes, the better to a point.
Okay.
Like I think the first 3 or 4 days, you wouldn't really be getting that much benefit if you ate it while it's still out on the counter. But once the water has turned cloudy, then you're getting a good amount of bacteria in there. And then putting it in the fridge just slows it down, but it continues to ferment. And probably at some point, it could cross that line.
Sure.
And so
it goes bad.
yeah. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
but I read you can keep them for 3 or 4 months in the fridge.
Oh, so a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, those are the questions that we have. I have one more for you that maybe you could touch on for just a second. Hydration. How does this fit into this whole process and gut health and all those things?
So important. In fact, when I'm working with clients, after we cover the science of creating habits, we talk about hydration. And we don't drink enough. We should be drinking, if you take your body weight in pounds, that's how many ounces half of that is how many ounces of water you should be drinking.
Okay.
And water, all of our body functions require water to be performed. And our cells require water to do their little daily activities. And when we don't have enough, we feel tired, we feel hungry, we feel off. So we're like searching for food. We have more cravings because we feel like we need something. And so our brain's like, hey, that chocolate made you feel good last time. Let's try that. You just keep trying different things and it never helps you feel better. If you can get your water intake up, body's going to work better. You'll have less cravings and you'll be able to make better choices with food.
Awesome. I love it. Great advice. Again, I think those are the questions that we had come in. You covered a lot of information. We want to say thank you, Kelly, for spending some time with us, taking the time to share your information, your knowledge, your wisdom with us, and look forward to trying to implement some of these small and incremental, but hopefully consistent changes in my own life as well. So thank you and Happy New Year and best of luck in all that you're working on.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
We also want to say thank you to those of you who have joined us today. If you enjoyed today's webinar, and there was a lot to enjoy, a lot of great information there, be sure that you tell your friends about the Living Your Best Life webinar series. And this presentation will also be available to rewatch, where you can share it with your friends at seniorgames.net. You want to be sure to join us next month for another very special webinar where we'll feature Emily Perry, who's going to be talking about yoga, which she says is good for the body as well as for the mind. This is going to take place on Tuesday, February 15th, 2022, excuse me. It's going to start at 1 p.m. It's going to go until about 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And until we meet again, get out there and live your best life. Thanks, everyone.